what is inflation according to the Austrian School?
Well, we always read about inflation, right? In the newspapers, everybody has some ideas about what inflation is, which is, of course, a loss in the purchasing power of money. However, we've totally misunderstood what inflation really is, because it's not as if there's one adjustment in all prices simultaneously, all at the same time across the board. It's nothing like that. Inflation is a process. It's not simply like the sea level or water level going up with all prices equally increasing and equally being affected, but instead it's a process with winners and losers. And that's the most curious thing about inflation and the key into understanding what inflation is.
So why is inflation often misunderstood?
That's a really good question. We had a French economist, or Irish-French economist, called Richard Cantillon, and he showed what Cantillon effects are. As I said, inflation is a process. It starts with somebody with new money entering the money supply, and the person or institution or company or whoever gets their hands on the money first have a temporary advantage. That means they can still bid on prices when prices haven't adjusted upward yet. So the first one to get the new money is the one who wins most, because they can bid and purchase goods that are not adjusted in prices yet. And then it's a process. It goes, the new money flows from hand to hand, from person to person, from institution to institution, and every institution along the way has some kind of advantage until the money gets to the last person in line, which generally, of course, is the working class people. However, they get the money when prices are already bid up. So they get access to the new money, they receive the new money, they receive the additional increase in the money supply when all prices already have adjusted upwards. So they're at a loss, because some people gain again from inflation and other people lose. We also see that we have a common misconception about what inflation is. Inflation and deflation never have been terms that were developed in economic science. They are terms that are developed by laymen, by financial journalists. We use the terms very loosely nowadays as an increase in prices, or increase in consumer prices, or a decrease in consumer prices. But that's not what inflation or deflation would refer to before. Inflating, it already says it, right? Inflating the money supply. It inflates like a balloon. And it always referred, well, historically it referred to an increase in the money supply and not just rising prices. Rising prices are a consequence of an increase in the money supply. Of course, what money is a different subject. However, this definition or this conception of inflation has been changed over time, and I think most of it in favor of politicians and governments. There are even countries where inflation is blamed not on the money supply or, for instance, monetary policy, but on external causes. So actually people get elected, or politicians try to get elected to fight inflation. But it's not some kind of disease, as Mises Ludwig von Mises would say. It's not some kind of disease or plague that hits us unexpectedly. It's actually a policy choice. And if you view it from that, if you view it in that way, then it gets clear that inflation is a choice, that inflation is not simply rising prices, but rising prices are simply a symptom of an increase in the money supply. That's what inflation is, and as we've seen with the Cantillon effects, it's not something that moves like the sea level. It's a process that goes from person to person, from wallet to wallet, after a multiple exchanges between people, with prices are being bid up. The first person in line has some increased monetary demand or increased money, which he can spend on goods. He will spend it. By spending it, he will bid up prices. And some other people have a disadvantage because they see the rising prices, but they have not yet access to the new money. So that's the most important. That's the two most important things in inflation, according to me.
Okay. And can we say that in general, the winners are often the rich, the well-connected, the politicians, the bankers, and the poor, the losers of inflation, are often the poor and the middle class?
Well, there's a big investor, legendary investor in the 20th century called Jesse Livermore. And Jesse Livermore always said or recommended to follow the money, to follow the money flows. And that's exactly what you should do with inflation. So we should see where the money gets created, which normally at the central bank, and then who or which institutions get access to the money first. Well, the most obvious winner in this case is the government. The government, for instance, right now gets a large quantity of its government bonds financed by the central bank, and as such gains access to the new money as one of the first groups of people in the economy. Other flows can be tracked as well from government spending. So where does a government spend its money? Well, maybe on some infrastructure, maybe on, which in the US is really relevant, of course, on military expenses, etc. And those parties, companies, industries tend to win with this process of inflation. But another curious thing is there's also a geographical element in it, right? Especially in the Eurozone. So we see that the Greeks in the past have had huge budget deficits. Huge budget deficits that one way or another were financed by the European Central Bank. So in this case, we can see that Greece as a country actually had a temporary advantage against the other European countries or Eurozone countries because they received money, an increase in the money supply, when prices elsewhere weren't bid up yet. So we see that countries like Greece, Spain were at a temporary advantage against the other countries. And that's the mechanism of the Eurozone and the euro. It's actually explained in a book by one of my colleagues, Philip Bagus, where he explains that the euro in some sense is a tragedy of the commons. So it gets overexploited and governments have the incentive to run large budget deficits and to spend the money when prices haven't adjusted upwards yet across the Eurozone.
So we can conclude that the winner is most often the government and the people are the losers.
The working class people are mostly the losers. Entrepreneurs get the money first through bank credit if they leverage. So investors, entrepreneurs, companies that use that credit to leverage their businesses tend to be able to win or are in the position to take advantage of the new money, of the inflation, as we've defined it before. But the working class people, of course, the ones who receive salaries are normally the ones, depending on which industry we're talking about, that lose relatively in this process of inflation. It's not as if prices would increase 2% a year. They increase maybe 10% over there and maybe 1% over here. It's a process where prices move relatively against each other, right? It's not like the sea level as I explained before. So normally working class people and I think entrepreneurs in some cases also benefit from easy money, especially when they finance through bank credit or financial markets.
Thank you, Olaf.
Welcome.